Yeah. How do I get my Bluetooth back on? Bluetooth.
Hello, everyone. This is Lynn Crawford from the Hope Dementia Support. And we are here today with Chasity Charette and Karen Schnitzer from the Area Agency on Aging and Disabilities to talk to you about the fact that there are resources available when your loved one has dementia here in the community. And I'm going to let Chasity and Karen introduce themselves and tell you a little bit about themselves. Chasity.
Hi guys, like Lynn said, I'm Chasity Charette. I'm a resource specialist at the Agency on Aging and Disabilities Resource Center. My main job is to connect community members like yourselves to different services and programs that are offered at our agency, as well as other services, resources, programs that are offered throughout the community, including like DSHS or Meals on Wheels or transportation agencies, things like that. Our calling us is really should be your first stop. To connect with us would help you connect with other resources and programs in the area.
Thank you. Karen.
Hi, I'm Karen Schnitzer, and I am a case manager with the Area Agency on Aging and Disabilities of Southwest Washington. And I work in Community Services Unit. And so I am a case manager for the Medicaid Alternative Care Program, the Tailored Supports for Older Adults Program, the Family Caregiver Support Program. So folks that are in these programs, I help get people connected to services.
And we apologize that we don't have Karen on camera. We've had some technical difficulties, so we're delighted that she's here. So while you—
Sorry about that.
Not a problem. We're just happy you're here. So while you all are listening to what Chasity and Karen have to say to you this evening, please save your questions. You can actually put them either in the chat or in the Q&A, and we will answer them toward the end of the program. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to you guys.
Awesome. Okay, so I'll start because initially when you try to get connected to services and resources, you would come through the Resource Center. You would give me a call or one of my 4 coworkers and discuss what you're looking for, whether that's something that's you're needed for caring for your loved one, or something that's needed for you, or something that's needed for both. You would really want to go through the Resource Center to get connected to those things. Anything from, support groups, which the dementia support group is a big one that we recommend to folks. And then there's other support groups as far as, traumatic brain injuries or the loss of a loved one. And so the connection to support groups is a big one that we like to connect folks with. There's also transportation or Meals on Wheels or sometimes even random resources that you don't think would even exist. We can find it for you. And if we can't, we'll make sure that we have exhausted all of our resources and all of our research capabilities to kind of find what you're needing. We try to tailor our conversations to be more specific of what you're looking for. And so when you're calling the Resource Center, you'll have that conversation with a resource specialist, and we kind of get down to the nitty-gritty of what's needed. And it's kind of like a one-stop shop. Like you call the Resource Center, you let us know what you're looking for, and we'll help you get that resolution. We'll help you get there. And then if you are needing, respite care or in-home care, then we can screen you right then on that phone call. And then that gets sent over to someone like Karen, who then takes over your case and helps you navigate and manage your services. And so with that, I'll hand it over to Karen, and she can talk about those respite and in-home care programs.
Thanks, Chasity. Thanks for allowing us to be with you today to help talk about some of the programs that our agency offers and that may be of use to you. The Medicaid Alternative Care, or the MAC program, and the Tailored Supports for Older Adults program, or the TSOA program, bring supports and services to unpaid caregivers, helping a person who is aged 55 and older, who meets specific financial, resource, and daily care need requirements. For eligible individuals, there is no Medicaid estate recovery or sliding fee participation. Eligible individuals can receive up to 20 hours of caregiving services or respite care services each month at no cost. An application is required for both of these programs. The Medicaid Alternative Care Program is for unpaid caregivers and care receivers. The Tailored Supports for Older Adults program can serve both unpaid caregivers and care receivers, as well as those older adults who do not have any unpaid caregiver support. With the MAC and TSOA program, you are given a budget each month. Starting on July 1st, the monthly budget allocation is $736 each month. A client or caregiver, care receiver can select which services they would like on their care plan based off of recommended services from the assessment that we do. All services come out of this monthly budget. The next program I will talk about is the Family Caregiver Support Program. Our longstanding Family Caregiver Support Program helps unpaid caregivers who take care of or support adults ages 18 or older who are in need of care. There is no application required for this program, and a sliding fee scale may be applied for respite care services only. So that's the only program that would cost money out of your pocket. And it all depends on the income of the care receiver. There is no resource limit for the Family Caregiver Support Program. If an unpaid caregiver and care receiver qualify for services, they can receive up to 20 hours of respite care each month. There is no estate recovery with this program. So once we receive a referral, we usually receive our referrals from either the resource center where Chastity's housed, or it comes over directly from the Home and Community Services office. But once we receive it, it's assigned to a community services case manager who will call you in order to set up a time for an assessment. The assessments we perform vary depending on which program you are interested in and applying for. We complete a person-centered assessment for each person who applies. Services can vary depending on your individual circumstances. Services may include information about local services, training and skills to provide care, including our STAR-C program that helps caregivers work through behavioral issues and challenges associated with Alzheimer's disease and dementia. There's dementia care education and support, services to help with depression, grief, or stress, adaptive equipment or supplies to make home care easier, caregiving services or respite care. And for those of you that don't know, respite care gives you a break from caregiving. So it would allow a caregiver to come in to help take over your place for a short time so that you can get some rest. Education about self-care and referrals to support groups in advanced care planning and home delivered meals. Please note all services are voluntary in nature, and you get to select which services you'd like on your care plan. Now I'd like to talk to you about the Medicaid long-term care program. The Medicaid long-term care program is for people who generally have higher care needs. Medicaid can help pay for a stay in a nursing home, assisted living facility, and adult family home care settings for folks who are low income and low resources. Medicaid can also help pay for help in order to keep you in your own home setting. Our agency manages all in-home Medicaid clients in our 5-county service area. For this program, there are income and resource limits, and a client must have care needs with both their activities of daily living tasks, so things like walking, bathing, dressing, toileting, as well as the instrumental activities of daily living tasks. Those are things like housekeeping, meal preparation, things like that. An application is required for this program and is processed through the Home and Community Services Office. There is an estate recovery clause associated with Medicaid long-term care services, and there may be a cost of care depending on what someone's income is. Just know that we are here to support you while you guys are caring for your loved ones. Feel free to reach out to our agency at any time you have questions or concerns, or if you'd like to sign up for one of our caregiving programs. Our Aging and Disability Resource Center can be reached at 360-735-5798, or you can send them an email, and their email address is Clark, C-L-A-R-K, A as in apple, D as in David, R as in red, C as in cat, at dshs.wa.gov. Does anybody have any questions?
I have some questions for you.
Okay.
First of all, are in-person visits by the case managers going to be starting again anytime soon?
We don't have an answer for that yet. We are waiting for word from AADSWA, which is the Aging and Disability, I can't remember their acronym name, but basically they oversee our programs up in Olympia. And they're the ones that will make a recommendation as to when in-home services and in-person visits can resume.
Thank you. Can you walk through what happens? I'm someone who is seeking services. So I call Chasity and tell her that I am caring for a loved one with dementia. I am starting to feel somewhat overwhelmed, and I feel like I need to have someone evaluate what it is that I need. Can you describe exactly how that happens? What is the process?
Okay. Chasity, do you want to take that, or do you want me to take an attempt at it?
I can start from where, talking to me first is, the very first step you should do. And sitting down, on the phone, just making that phone call to me is, the hugest step you can make for yourself. Especially when you're caring for someone and you're just feeling so overwhelmed. Please call us. Even if it's just to kind of sit down and just chat, just wanting to just let it come out and release, and just knowing that we're there to be that ear for you is something that we really enjoy as part of our job. But when you do call us and you express to us, you know, I'm feeling overwhelmed. I need some help. The first thing I'm going to do is kind of ask how you are. Like, what is your day-to-day like? Because I kind of want to get a sense of exactly what your needs are before I just start throwing stuff at you. You know, different program eligibilities and benefits and blah, blah. Like, I don't want to throw that at you at first. I kind of want to sit down and have that conversation with exactly what's going on at home and having that conversation with you. And then whatever you express to me that your needs are, we'll kind of work towards what would be the best suited either program under us for you, or maybe Medicaid long-term care, or maybe it's none of those and you're really just wanting to connect with like a support group, or you know, maybe you want to privately pay and not go under a service. You know, that's an option too, and I can provide resources for that as well. But the steps really are just having that conversation first, and then we can discuss, you know, what resources and services are best fit. If you are ready to get into one of the programs or services, we can screen that exact moment for the tailored support for older adults, the family caregiver support program, or our Medicaid alternative care program. And you can do that with the resource specialist right there. What happens next is we just send that information over to Karen's supervisor, Katie Sagano, and she makes sure that, you know, we've put all of the information that's required, and then she'll assign a case manager. And so you'll get someone wonderful like Karen, or one of her other, you know, case manager coworkers, and they'll finish up the enrollment process with you. And then that's really where my job ends. After that initial phone call with me, you don't really talk to me too much after that, which is kind of a good thing, because that means that you're getting the services that you need. But it kind of sucks, because then I don't get to see how things are progressing for you and seeing if you get what you need. But and then so after me, it gets passes on to Karen if that's the next step.
Yes. And when I receive a referral, we make contact usually as soon as possible, depending on the influx of referrals we receive. But we generally try to reach out to our clients within 3 to 5 business days. Once during that phone call, and you know, by now we'll know what program that you're applying for, whether it's the Tailored Supports for Older Adults program, or the Medicaid Alternative Care program, or the Family Caregiver Support program. The case manager will schedule a time to do an assessment. In pre-COVID times, we would do assessments for the Family Caregiver Support program in the person's home. And then we would do the Tailored Supports for Older Adults programs assessments over the telephone, and then make a follow-up home visit to get paperwork signed. But as you know, COVID changed how we do everything. So as of right now, all assessments are being done over the telephone. So we would get an appointment scheduled, depending on which program you're applying for. Let's just say it's the Family Caregiver Support program. We would either email or mail you something called a response card that will have some of the answers to some of the questions that we'll be asking during the assessment. And the assessment asks some pretty tough questions. What this assessment tool is trying to get at is levels of stress, caregiver stress, and levels of depression. So some of them can be difficult to answer. So depending on the situation, you may just want to do this assessment with the case manager over the telephone by yourself, or if somebody, if they feel comfortable, the care receiver can certainly listen in to this assessment. And we ask all kinds of questions. we're trying to get at the levels of caregiver stress because that's what helps determine eligibility for our programs. And so we gather information on what your care receivers' needs are in terms of activities of daily living, what they need help with, what they don't, what kinds of behavioral issues are currently going on right now, or if someone's wandering, for instance. We gather a whole bunch of information. Usually we will not know what services somebody will qualify for right away because we need to take that information that we gather from the assessment and put it into the computer. That's all algorithm based. And the assessment tool makes recommendations of what would best help meet your needs currently. And then we would have a consultation phone call. So we would call you back and talk about some of the recommended services on the care plan. And then you would get to pick which services you'd like on your care plan. And so this is very client and caregiver driven. So it's not us calling the shots. We're just presenting options to you, and then you get to pick what you think is going to make the most difference. You know, keeping in mind that people change over time. And so we don't necessarily expect one assessment to be exactly like another. It's very much fluid and it changes. Does that help answer the question?
I think so. I have a question that says, if a person is so overwhelmed that they not only need respite, but emotionally stressed and need counseling as well, is that a service that people can get?
Yes. And so what we do, counseling is sometimes a recommended service depending on the stress level. And so what we recommend is if a person has access to health benefits and or mental health benefits through their own insurance, be it Medicare or a Medicare supplemental insurance, we encourage folks to reach out to their own insurance first for a couple of reasons. One, you may have a bigger benefit than what we can give through the Family Caregiver Support Program. And two, the counseling budget, you know, there's only so much counseling money is available each year. And so we want to make sure that the folks that are accessing the counseling benefit through the Family Caregiver Support Program, it's because they don't have any other way of getting it. All right, let me back up. So the counseling benefit is up to 6 visits a year. So if you want it throughout the year, it would be a visit once every other month, or if you want to take your visits once a month, you know, that's a decision between the caregiver and the contracted counselor.
Is transportation ever covered, or can people get help with that under some of these programs?
Chasity, are you taking this or am I?
Yeah, sorry, I was muted. Yes, so if you're on one of our programs, the case managers can send a referral over to the Resource Center for transportation options, or if you can even call and ask for transportation options. AADSWA does offer a senior transportation program, but with that program, funding is very limited, like with most programs. But if you have tried every option, like CVAN or public transportation, or, you know, paying privately for medical, or your Medicare doesn't cover it, senior transportation is definitely a route that you can take, either through the case manager sending a referral to us, or just calling in and saying, this is what I've tried. Can I access senior transportation? And we would then do an application with you, and then send that over to the program coordinator. And that program coordinator will let us know whether you've been approved or not, and then you can access transportation through that program.
And to kind of tack on to that, Chasity, we are recently have been made aware of that we can also access transportation through the Family Caregiver Support Program.
Mm-hmm.
So if that's an option, if you're applying for that program or thinking of applying for that program, that is an offered service.
Thanks, Karen.
You're
One
welcome.
of the things that we hear in our groups frequently, and you may be aware that we refer to AADSWA a lot. And one of the things that we hear when we say, gee, maybe you should give them a call, is that people will say, I don't think that we're really ready for that. I'm glad that we have the phone number, but I just don't think I'm ready. So what is your recommendation? When do you think that people should reach out? Should they wait until they think they need it? That's for either one of you.
Okay. For me, I would encourage folks call before they feel they necessarily need it. And I'll kind of give you my reasoning for that. First of all, it's always good just to know what services are out there. Second, being you want to have an idea of what services are out there before something happens and you end up in a crisis. Say someone falls and breaks a hip, ends up in the hospital, or some other crisis happens. It puts more stress on a caregiver to have to try to track down what services, if any, are out there for folks when you're in the throes of a crisis. Versus if you just reach out and get an idea of what services are out there, there's nothing saying you have to sign up for services. We're all completely voluntary. We're here to share information and what resources we have, so that if such a time comes up where you feel like a person's care needs are becoming more and more, maybe it's time to call and see if I qualify for respite care. Chasity, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, just what I like to tell folks when they're, not necessarily needing the respite, there's other aspects of the programs that you can utilize, like incontinence supplies or, some easy durable medical equipment like a shower bench or, a walker, cane, things like that you can access through our program. So I think it's always good to call, see what is available for you that's going to be tailored to what you're needing. And then if you would like to access other aspects besides the respite or in-home care, that's totally fine too, because there's no wrong way to accessing services. It's just really what you need. So
one of our professional participants says that he would recommend that caregivers contact the agencies or other resources before they think they need it. Be proactive, plan and be prepared so that not reacting in a crisis when fewer options and most likely things are urgent and very emotional.
Yeah, that is 100% true, because we aren't urgent services, and because it can take some time to get through enrollment and having a caregiver assigned or getting that medical equipment or incontinence supplies. That can take some time. And so if you're needing it the next day, unfortunately that can't happen.
One of the things that happens so frequently with people with dementia is that they have behavioral issues. What kind of behaviors can the case managers help our caregivers with?
Oh, that's all you, Karen.
Okay. So we try to help by by thinking creatively and outside the box, if you will, to try to help come up with some ideas that might help lessen behaviors. But we do have a program, I mentioned it briefly in my presentation, something called STAR-C. This is a proven program that I believe goes for 6 months. I don't have the information right in front of me, but it's a program that helps a STAR-C coach, a trained coach, would meet with you one-on-one. And in our office, we have 2 coaches, Maria Latanzi and Willa Evans, that have been trained in this program to work with caregivers one-on-one to try to help find creative solutions to different behaviors that go on. And it can be any type of behavior, whether it's wandering or agitation or sundowners, anything, if someone's refusing to take meds. So the STAR-C coach will work on figuring out and trying to get to the root cause of what's causing that behavior, and then try to work on ways to try to either avoid that trigger, or help find alternative ways to redirect somebody. I've had several caregivers go through the STAR-C program with both coaches, and they have nothing but fabulous things to say about the program. So it's certainly, if you're experiencing behavior issues like that are on the severe side, perhaps STAR-C might be an option.
Thank you. And there was a comment that said that it's a 6-week program.
6 weeks. Yeah, I believe it's 6 weeks where that they would meet, well, of course, it's all over the phone anyway because of COVID. But then after the initial 6 weeks, then I believe there are monthly follow-up visits for another 3 months.
Okay, thank you.
To kind of check in and see how things are going.
Can you describe what is included in the Family Caregiver Support Program? Sure.
There's a variety of resources available. There's adult daycare, and again, that's temporarily stopped because of COVID. The vendor that we use is CDM Services in Vancouver, and folks can take their loved one to adult daycare for a set amount of hours a day, usually a couple of days a week, but again, that's going to vary depending on what the situation is. And that's a form of giving you some respite care. There's in-home respite care that we spoke about. There's counseling, personal emergency response system. So one of those help buttons you can push in case your loved one has a fall and can't get up off the floor. There's education. There's classes that we offer. We offer really good, powerful tools for caregiver class that I usually recommend to folks. And that's a 6-week workshop. There's care supplies. So things like incontinence pads, briefs, wipes, Chuck's pads that you lay flat on the bed or a chair if someone has an urinary incontinence. There's durable medical equipment that we can get. So things like shower chairs, handheld showers, grab bars, anything safety related. Sometimes folks need a grab bar installed if there's a step someone needs to navigate. And then for some folks that need like a modification, a home modification, I can think of several examples where we were able to work on getting a shower remodel because someone couldn't lift their leg up and over the threshold of the tub. Those two have been put on hold because of COVID. But hopefully as soon as things are lifted, we'll be able to start resuming the environmental modifications.
So is that dependent on ability to pay?
Yeah, we usually see if somebody, has, obviously if they have $1 million in the bank and can pay for it themselves, that's what we would encourage them to do. But if someone doesn't have means to pay, then we can certainly look at to see if that's something our program would be able to do.
Is there a general support group involved in the family caregiver support as well?
There is. And Chasity, do you want to take that one, or would you like for me to answer it?
So we do have just a general support group for caregivers. It's Zoom, unfortunately, because of COVID. And so if you wanted to be part of that and just, connect with others, you can give the Resource Center a call or send us an email and say, I would like to register for the caregiver support Zoom, and we will get you registered. It's just getting your demographics and contact information and sending you that link. They meet, I think it's every
Is it the first and third Wednesday?
I think it's the first and third Tuesday.
Okay, it could be.
But yeah, so it's a couple times a month, and it's just a Zoom, and you can, attend or not attend. But yeah, calling the Resource Center, we would get you registered for that if you wanted to join.
Thank you. Can you summarize some of the media resources, the handouts, and other materials that are available from the Resource Center? And how do people take advantage of them in the world of COVID?
So I would always suggest checking out our website, but we're doing a lot of updating to that website, so I wouldn't recommend it now. The best way is to just give us a call and say, hey, can I have some information on transportation or home delivered meals, or, can you just send me a little bit about what AADSWA does, or, just giving us a call, and we'd be more than happy to email that to you or mail it to you, whichever is the best way for you to get that information, paper form or electronic form.
So what if a caregiver doesn't qualify for a reduced rate on outside caregiving? Do they qualify for the lower contracted rate for the caregiving agencies that AADSWA contracts with?
That's a good question.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. If a caregiver doesn't qualify for respite care services, again, depending on the situation, if we put all the information into the computer, and if it just doesn't bring up respite care services as an option, you always have the ability to talk with the case manager and see if there's any way to ask for something called an exception to the rule. Sometimes we're able to authorize respite care services even if it's not a recommended service. Otherwise, you would be able to go to home care agencies and would need to pay whatever their private rate is, and that varies according to agency.
So can you use any agency in town if you are Right. If you are
for the family caregivers.
Right.
Well,
right.
I'm sorry.
So if you have enrolled in the family caregiver support, can you use any agency in town?
No. So we have 6 or 7 different contracted home care agencies that have contracts directly with AADSWA. And unfortunately, at this time, you're limited to one of those agencies. If a person is privately paying for their care, then they can use any home care agency.
Okay. How about if the caregiver has their own health issues, such as macular degeneration, or they're no longer able to drive? Are there resources that you can steer them toward?
Yes. Depending on what the situation is, sometimes if somebody is an unpaid caregiver for their spouse, say, but they have medical issues of their own, it's possible that while your spouse would be on the family caregiver support program, it might be possible for the caregiver that has some medical issues, we can look at seeing if they qualify for the Tailored Supports for Older Adults program.
How frequently is you have an individual in your home and you've had the initial assessment? What if there's a big change in condition and needs become higher? Can they be assessed at that time, or do they have to wait for the routine assessment?
Okay, if someone has a, oh, I'm sorry, was that the end of the question?
Basically, you know, so something has happened that has increased the level of care. How does that assessment occur?
Okay, so we usually, once we do our initial assessment, there would be a 6-month kind of survey that gets mailed out to act as a check-in for folks. And then there would be the annual assessment. If somebody has a change of condition, we can certainly do a reassessment to see if there are additional caregiving services that can be put into place. However, with that being said, the respite care benefit is limited to 20 hours per month. Now, say someone has a hospital stay as a result of this change in condition. Sometimes we're able to get an additional, some additional time authorized through what we call an exception to rule request. So sometimes we can we submit these requests to our supervisor, and then it gets reviewed by a program manager. Sometimes we can say, okay, so-and-so had a hospital stay. He needs, the caregiver needs some additional support in providing care. Can we get an extra 20 hours for a couple of months until things kind of get back down to baseline?
Are there translation or interpreter services involved?
If somebody needs an interpreter, if English is not their primary language, then yes, we do have access to interpreters, and the forms we mail out would be mailed out in both English and whatever language, whatever their primary language is.
If a new person calls the agency and has to leave a message, how long should they expect to wait for a callback? Can they ask that the callback be made at a certain day or time?
Yes, so we try to return calls within a 48-hour period. Typically, and I don't want to jinx us, but typically we get back to folks within 24 hours, but we really shoot for 48 hours because we just don't know who's going to be sick or who's going to be out because of this or that or what have you. So 48 hours is generally the wait time for a phone call. And you can, if you leave us a voice message and say, please call me back Friday at, 3 p.m., then we will give you a call on that Friday at 3 p.m. Whatever you would be easiest for you to be contacted is when we would contact you. But typically we like to try to get back to folks within 48 hours.
How many resource people do you have in your call center?
We have 4.5. So our fifth person is a part-time. And so we just say 4.5, but really there's 5 of us. And it kind of varies with who can do calls because the people who work in office are the ones that are doing calls. And so we rotate that because of COVID. And so if you talk with me and you want to talk to me again, you can ask for me in that voicemail and say, I would like to talk with Chasity, but it could be a little bit longer of a wait period if you want to talk to me specifically. Otherwise, you will get called back from one of us, whoever's in the office at that time.
Are there emergency services in additional to the normal services? If I feel like I have an emergency going on, is the agency the right place to call, or should I be calling someone else?
If you're experiencing a medical emergency, our recommendation is you call 911. Unfortunately, our services were not urgent or emergency services, and so our office is not open all the time, and we're there usually Monday through Friday from 8 until 5. So that would be our recommendation. But certainly, if you have a case manager and there is something going on, it's always good to let the case manager know.
So if there is something going on, is it possible for someone else to call on behalf of the caregiver?
Of course. So if, say, something happens to a caregiver that's providing care for a care receiver, somebody else could at least call in to let us know something's going on and leave a message if the case manager's not available. Ideally, when we get services set up for somebody, we try to get some emergency contact information in case we're not able to reach you, so that if we're not able to reach you, there's somebody else we can reach out to that might be able to get in touch with you. So ideally, if whoever they put as their emergency contact, if that person calls us, at least we know they're on the consent form. Otherwise, we're not able to share information if they're not on somebody's consent form.
Okay. We understand that there are activity kits for various levels of dementia. Can you describe that and how you would access one?
Sure. So we do offer dementia kits. We have early stage, middle stage, and late stage kits. Before COVID, you would just let your case manager know, and then they would, you could either come pick it up at our office, or the case manager could bring it out to you depending on what the circumstance is. Now, with COVID being around, you would let your case manager know you're interested in the dementia kit, and there are different activities depending on what stage you're in. The case manager can make arrangements to either drop the bag off or in our lobby, or sometimes we'll drop those kits off at like the front porch, but we're not allowed to have contact with folks yet. And that's how we've gotten some of the dementia kits out. But the activities are really interesting in each bag. There's puzzles and shapes and like those koosh balls and things that are very tactile for folks that can keep some folks busy or entertained. And it's going to vary, again, depending on if it's the early stages, the middle stages, or the late stages.
So can you describe for us, sorry, I've lost my train here, a couple of things that stand out to you in your job? Have you had positive experiences? And what might be an example of those? Do you hear back from people that you have helped? And I'd ask that of both of you.
Okay. I've had a bunch of different experiences. I certainly love being a case manager. This is just kind of right up my alley, because I always like feeling like I'm helping folks. I have had contacts with some folks that have received services through our program. And I've even heard from some folks after their loved one has passed away and they're no longer on our program, thanking us for the time and the caring. I find a lot of people just feel like they need to be heard. And that's part of what our job is just to be there for folks and to help get them connected to services that will help them out. Does that answer the question?
I think so. Chasity, how about you?
You know, I've had a variety of experiences because my job doesn't always revolve around the services that are offered at AADSWA. There's lots of other things that I connect people to, like, you know, food benefits or the Clark County Food Bank, or helping them get on the Medicare supplement program. Like there's lots of aspects of my job. So I have had quite a few experiences other than in-home care and respite services. I would say that when I get someone on services through our agency, I don't necessarily hear any updates on what happened. That's the unfortunate part, is I don't know what's happening with them after they've gotten on services. I trust and, you know, that our case managers have provided the services that they're looking for, but that's kind of where it stops for me, is just connecting folks to those programs and resources. I've had lots of experiences where I've brought it home with me. So with COVID, there's been a lot of inability to connect, you know, face-to-face with folks. But I've had the opportunity to bring like incontinence supplies to folks, or PPE equipment to caregivers. I've had that opportunity. And so that part has been really rewarding for me, because I get to see those that I'm helping, other than just, you know, talking to them on the phone. So I've had a variety of experiences, and once you're on services and you get off the phone with me, that's kind of the end of the conversations for us together.
We talked a little bit about the fact that you do not provide urgent or crisis management. What would happen? What would be your your go-to response if you had someone call you who was clearly in crisis?
So for me, and this has happened maybe a handful of times, is I kind of try to talk with the person, you know, try to kind of de-escalate the situation to where they're feeling comfortable with, you know, opening up to me. And then I would ask them if I can do, it's called a warm handoff to the Beacon crisis line. That crisis line is a vital resource for our community, for folks who are either having, you know, a serious issue with their mental health, or even for caregivers who are just experiencing, you know, those exhausting and, you know, hard to handle behaviors from their care receiver. I try to recommend that to folks who are just feeling overwhelmed and just need someone to come out and kind of walk them through that crisis. Unfortunately, I'm not that person. I'm not licensed to do something like that, but I can talk with you, talk through it, and maybe do that warm handoff to the crisis line, or give you their contact number.
Can you explain a warm handoff?
Yeah, so what I would do is with you on the phone, we would then call the crisis line together, and I would explain to the person on the other line from the crisis line, I would explain to them the situation, I would introduce you and kind of let you feel comfortable with the person, and then I would excuse myself from the conversation.
Thank you. Karen, for you, can you talk a little bit about the alert systems that you mentioned?
Sure. The personal emergency response systems, we have contracted vendors, one of which is a local vendor, and that's Global Security and Communications. They have an office in downtown Vancouver, and they offer all different kinds of units. They have just the regular button that you can push. You would either wear it around your neck like a pendant, or they have the wristwatch variety that you would wear just like a watch. So there are basic ones where you can, if someone has a fall, you can press it and it would call for help. There's cellular models that doesn't necessarily need to be tied to a landline or a cell phone. So it all goes off of GPS. There's personal emergency response buttons that have automatic fall detection. So if your loved one that you're caring for has frequent falls, and you may or may not be around depending on what the situation is, if a person has a fall and they're not able to press the button themselves, it's automatically going to send an alert to whatever contracted agency that we're using. And they also have ones with GPS that can help locate folks. So if your loved one is wandering and is wandering unsafely outside the home, that might be an option as well.
How do we know that they are wandering unsafely and are just wandering?
Well, usually, you know, do they try to take off from the home with or without you knowing that they've wandered? If you live in a busy area, you know, are they wandering onto a street? Or usually if they take off and you can't necessarily find where they are, and if they're not able to find their way back home, those would be indicators that, you know, if someone leaves the home, they can't find their way back.
So then if you lost them, then you would contact that company? Is that the idea, or is it tied into your phone, or?
Yeah, they have ones that have the GPS locators on them, so that they could give a GPS location of where they're at. And then, you know, you could let them know, you would call the monitoring agency and let them know that they're missing or they can't be located, and it would generate a GPS response to try to locate them.
Okay, thank you. Chastity, right off the top of your head, do you have that crisis line phone number?
I do not, sorry, but I can provide it to you, Lynn.
Okay, thank you. Somebody asked that question. I wasn't being mean.
Oh, no, but I will be giving it to Lynn.
All right, thank you. Can you describe the Ombudsman program?
Oh, so our long-term care ombudsman, they're kind of like the advocates for folks who are living in residential care units. So like assisted living, nursing homes, and adult family homes. It's a volunteer-based program. And so those volunteers go out and they monitor certain assisted living facilities or adult family homes or nursing homes to make sure that they're licensed, they're up to date on, you know, different state laws. And then they also advocate for the residents. So if the resident has any complaints or feels unsafe, or there's an APS report involved with the residential care facility, then those advocates would go out and find out what the problem is. They mainly assist folks who don't have anyone, or they have family members who live out of state or too far to come in. So they're, yeah, basically advocacy for those living in residential care.
Thank you. So a question related to that, when I think of the AADSWA, I think of it is that your focus is to attempt to keep people in their own home. But when people are in an adult family home, do they still receive care from or services from AADSWA?
So
Okay.
Go ahead, Karen.
Oh, all right. Do you want to take it, or do you want me to take it?
Oh, go ahead. You know a little bit more than I do.
Okay. So our agency does the case management for folks that are living in their homes. But there's kind of a sister agency called Home and Community Services that handles all case management for folks that are on Medicaid that are living in residential facilities. So they do all of the case management for folks living in residential facilities, and then we do the in-home.
Okay, thank you. Someone asked, are ombudsman reports available?
Yes. So, and I will provide this to Lynn as well, the link. So if DSHS has a part of their website where you can search assisted living, adult family homes, and nursing homes. You can search them and they come up with their reports on, you know, the last year of what was happened. So any kind of complaints that were made, you know, did they file the license on time? Those types of reports are available at the DSHS website. As long as they're licensed with DSHS. DSHS doesn't keep track of folks who aren't licensed with them though.
Can you tell us a little bit about the programs that caregivers can actually work with? I'm trying to think of the name, so I'm stalling. Where they're independent practitioners, but you can actually hire a caregiver who is contracted with DSHS. I knew nothing about that until I had an incident where I needed to find a caregiver for a family member.
So do you
care.
mean
Karina care?
Okay, so like individual providers is
yes.
what we call.
Yes.
Yes.
Can you describe that? I might be not the only one that doesn't know about it.
So individual providers are mostly for folks who are on Medicaid long-term care services. As far as I'm aware, our in-home programs like tailored support for older adults or family caregiver support program, we don't use individual providers to provide the care. We strictly use agency caregivers. But that might have changed. I'm not sure. Is that still true, Karen?
Nope, it's still true. Technically, we're still in our 5-year demonstration project for the tailored supports program and the Medicaid alternative care programs. There's been some talk that these programs might use individual providers, but if anything, it's just talk at this point.
Okay. One more question related to a program that Pearls. Does it still exist? And can you describe it?
So the program coordinator for our Pearls program, she has recently switched to a different role. There has been lots of talk about the continuation of that program, but in a sense, that program is for folks who are displaying symptoms of depression. The person who was in charge of it, Willa, she would typically meet with the person in, I think it's an 8-week program where she would meet with them for, once a week for a certain amount of weeks to kind of help them kind of figure out how to manage and cope with their depression. And then after that, I want to say it's 8 weeks. After those 8 weeks of once a week meetings, it goes to like once every month and then once every 3 months, just to connect to make sure that you're still managing and coping your depression symptoms. And she basically is a coach or is coaching you on how to manage and cope with your depression.
Okay, thank you. So I think that wraps up the questions that I currently have. So if anyone has burning questions, please put them in the chat really quick. And I would leave it to the two of you to wrap up anything that we've talked about that or haven't talked about that you would like to share from both of you.
I would just like to say I hope soon in the future we can do this in person. The presentation is a lot more fun, a lot more engaging when we're in person. So hopefully we can do it in person soon.
Yes, and I second those thoughts, Chastity. Yeah, presentations are always more interactive when we're all in the same room. So let's hope COVID goes away. So that we can do that.
Well, I want both of you to know how much positive feedback that we get related to the Agency on Aging. So if you haven't gotten any strokes lately, I'm here to give them to you now. I really appreciate all of you and everything that you do. You are immensely helpful to the people that you serve. So thank you, thank you.
Thank you, Lynn.
Thank you, Lynn.
All right, I believe, looks like everyone is done. Somebody did say that this is amazing. I had no idea so many resources were available. And thank you for this webinar.
You're very welcome. That's just the tip of the iceberg. There's so much more to connect with if you give us a call.
Yes.
Thank you, thank you. And everyone is on the call. We will be sending you resources as well as the flyer for next month's education, which is about caring for the caregiver by Joyce Beadle. So hope to see you next month. Thanks a lot.